Is the American dream alive and well? If you asked today's guest, Ken Langone, he'd certainly say yes. In his early years, Ken spent time in the U.S. Army and dug ditches for the Long Island Expressway before going to Bucknell University to study economics. After graduation, he began a career on Wall Street and earned his MBA at NYU. He then became an early investor and co-founder of a little company called the Home Depot, which is today's largest home improvement retailer. Today, Ken sits as the chair of the Board of Trustees at NYU Langone Medical Center.
Talked a little bit yesterday about all that you've accomplished, particularly at the health system. I'd love to explore where we go next, where you lead us next in terms of the health system. Number one teaching health system in the country, ergo the world. There's such a big market we're in. There's other good health systems around. But would you share with me and us a little bit about what I know you love capitalism, and capitalism plays an important role even in the not-for-profit world in terms of healthcare. And it seems to me that the term not-for-profit is just a tax status. And in fact, health systems have to generate returns so that they have capital to invest in improvement of their care. Give us a little color on the peculiar nature of having to be a not-for-profit in New York and what that means for the future.
What you just said sums it up. We don't have the luxury of operating at a loss because the well will run dry. On the other hand, you can't do everything with a dollar sign attached to it. So, for example, take what we did at Lutheran Hospital in Brooklyn.
Amazing.
We took what was a losing situation. Ironically, Jim, the better you operate, the more effective and cost-conscious you become. Those poor people that were being treated in that hospital before we took over were being treated in a hospital that was a big loser. That's why Lutheran got rid of it. Now, I take it as a badge of honor that we can operate that facility, give the same exact quality of care to the patients there as any other campus we have, and still show a modest profit. Now, thank God we have the rest of the place, Mineola.
You could not have done that as a standalone hospital.
That's exactly right. Now, but going forward, we can continue, as long as we don't let the well run dry, we can continue to keep making enhancements. Because, Jim, when you think about the improvements we've had in the quality of life, much of it evolves around technology. We were just mentioning about a friend who had surgery. 30 years ago, the only way that they could find out if you had cancer internal was what was known as exploratory surgery. Nobody does exploratory surgery anymore because the technology and MRI and CAT scans.
That's such an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that because chatting with our friend earlier about his mom, it's the same surgery my mom had 30 years ago, and it was exploratory and wound up killing her. Look how things have advanced. They do 4-inch long incisions laparoscopically, and it's over and it's done. The big recovery for my mom was from the surgery.
With the benefit of these incredibly capable minds developing and inventing these devices and drugs and so forth, we should be prepared to accept and, more importantly, to embrace what comes down the line in the way of science and technology. You can't do that if you're broke. You look at these New York City hospitals. If they weren't tied to the tax rolls where the money comes from, they'd be gone. In fact, right now, you've got 2 prominent hospitals in New York, one for sure, Maimonides, that is struggling with survival. Who's going to be the loser of that? The people that go there for their health care.
And the professionals who try and work there and provide that health care.
Exactly. Profit. Well, the other thing, Jim, any professional worth his salt always wants the very best of what's out there for his patients.
Sure.
If you don't have the ability to afford all this technology, you're not going to keep the best people. They're just not going to do it because as good as they are, they know that there'll be a better physician, a better diagnostician, if they have the benefit of science and technology.
Which requires capital.
Capital, and also requires a free market. Thank God, I know that when we went and did our analysis to do a whole new system for imaging, we had Philips, we had GE, and we had Siemens. And we had the benefit of looking at each of their technologies and deciding which one was best. Now, nobody keeps the lead forever in business. The guy that's behind the eight ball either brings his stuff up to superior or he goes out of business. We have the benefit of competition working in our favor, bringing us technology that would not be developed if there weren't the element of competition forcing companies. If GE wants to stay in the imaging business, it's got to spend money on R&D. It's got to spend money on development. It's got to spend money on bringing in talent. So it all works. And if you want proof, go look at what happens in these countries that have gone to socialism. Venezuela, Cuba. They're behind the eight ball for one good reason. They can't afford what it costs. And in turn, you can only afford what it costs if you're financially viable. By the way, remember this about depreciation. True, you get a deduction for it. But don't forget, the next iteration of the device is going to cost a lot more than the last iteration of the device. So even though you've preferably set aside the money, it isn't enough to stay current on the most modern and up-to-date technology. So I don't know how you can run a not-for-profit like NYU without some concept or some understanding of the bottom line. And I can tell you right now, Jim, if you look at all the enhancements we've made to not only facilities, but to training, to teaching, to recruitment, we couldn't have done that if we weren't financially as sound as we are. Just couldn't do it.
Ken, to make that point about the capitalist system, as I understand it, a not-for-profit hospital like NYU Langone gets reimbursed for services they provided.
Right.
Be able to provide that services, you need a few things. Capital for a few things. Working capital, you have to pay your people.
Exactly.
You have to build your facilities and you have to hire your people before you provide the service. Second, you need philanthropy to give you capital to do the new things, to make the new investments. And finally, you need whatever operating margins you can eke out so that you can take those operating margins with your philanthropy to take a hospital like Lutheran. And that requires an investment of capital before you can turn it around, before the reimbursements will come close to covering your cost of providing service.
Exactly, Jim. And the other thing, remember, you're dealing with the payer. The payer is not typically the individual. It's an insurance company.
That's right.
They're very sharp and they're very aggressive and they're very, very demanding on bottom line. You take companies like
and they want you to prove that the services you're providing to their patients have efficacy. They're doing the job. You're taking care of their people.
Absolutely right, Jim. There's a new drug on the market now. It's apparently a very dramatic improvement in weight loss. And the pitch from the manufacturer, the developer of the drug, is what it does to life, how much it enhances the insurance companies with fewer cardiovascular problems, with fewer musculoskeletal problems. Somebody that's overweight puts enormous burden on their joints.
Sure.
So not only do you have to show that it works, but that what benefit it brings to the patient and in turn to the carrier of that patient's insurance.
Which just reinforces your underlying premise of why capitalism is the system that best works, because there you see it in the microcosm. I've invested the money to discover this drug. I've tested this drug, and now I'm ready to bring it to market. So that's all investment. Now I have to prove to the payers, the carriers, that they should reimburse for this drug because it has this lifetime value for the patient. Ergo, you have healthier patients who are visiting their medical supplier less frequently.
and with less severe chronic illnesses like
Yep.
heart disease, like cardiovascular,
Yep.
like musculoskeletal problems. You know, people that have.
Funny how this system actually works.
Oh, it works, Jim. The proof of you want the ultimate proof?
Yeah, please.
50 years ago, if you lived to be 48, you were an old man. I'm 87 today, and there's nothing unusual about an 87-year-old man. We're living longer.
Well, when Roosevelt implemented Social Security, the retirement age was 65, but the life expectancy, as I understand it, was 62.
Right. Well, in fact, Jim, when pensions were first created back in the 1800s, the reason they picked 65 was because nobody lived to 65 and they wouldn't have to pay.
Yep.
So, I mean, that tells you, Jim, just how that's, to me, the ultimate yardstick of how well we're doing. You know, a guy 70 years old today or a woman 70 years old today has every right to expect she can live a lot longer and a lot healthier. But this all comes through scientific breakthrough and scientific development. And all I can say to you, Jim, go to Venezuela, look at the acute starvation. I'm told, I haven't seen the numbers where they came from. I'm told that 2 years ago, the average Venezuelan lost 20 pounds for lack of food.
Wow.
It's scary. It's scary. Thank God I have a background in profit-oriented activities, because I think recognizing that we have a higher calling than just to make money, but recognizing also that we're able to do more for that higher calling if we have the wherewithal to afford ourselves the opportunity of technology, of science. I mean, for example, the tuition-free program. We know every year 100 kids are going to leave our place fully qualified to be a great doctor. We're able to afford it because we made an effort to have free tuition. But I pray to God one day that all medical schools, because the calling of a kid in medicine is a calling to make life better for a lot of other people. Not just make money, but they have a kid that wants to become a doctor has within them this certain compassion and drive and curiosity.
It's not a business decision, it's a calling.
Exactly right, Jim. Not unlike being a priest. And I can assure you that all the things we're able to do for our people, for example, we now pay, I think we're at the higher end of pay for nurses. I think our starting pay for a nurse is $104,000 a year. Well,
Wow.
Guess what? Yeah, guess what? If we didn't have the ability to pay that money to those nurses, we'd join we have a shortage of nurses anyway. It would be a lot more severe because we'd be in competition. Now, how do the other guys catch up? Well, they got to pay what we pay, but you come back to square one. If they can't make the money to pay the extra money, they can't pay the extra amount.
The hole gets deeper.
It's all a cycle, Jim, and you can't break it. And frankly, we shouldn't try to break it.
You've been a busy guy from the day you started your career. You were busy working while you were in high school and college. You came from a hardworking family.
Yep.
What advice do you have for my sons, my kids' generation, about how do they balance life?
My success, such as it is, happened because I had an awful lot of people help me along life's way, all the way back to when I was a child and I was an altar boy at St. Mary's in Roslyn. My success is really the collection of efforts of all those people. I tell my boys, please learn from my mistakes. I urge people in career path choices, don't take a job that you're not going to love going to every day. So my first recommendation is make sure it's something that really engages you in a way that you put your very best out for it. Second, do whatever you can to make sure you're there for your kids. I don't buy into the notion that I have to be all consumed in my business to make sure I do what I'm obligated to my family. The biggest choice you're going to make in life, is who's your life partner going to be? Elaine and I are now married 66 years. She bore the heaviest part of the brunt in raising the kids because of my career. But I always knew, and Elaine, thank God, she was athletic, so she would engage in activities with the kids, skiing and swimming and all the things that you want your kids to avail themselves of. So the best advice I can give you is be conscious of your various roles in life: husband, father, partner, business associate, salesman. Be conscious of all those things and do your best to bring some balance into it, that one doesn't suffer at the expense of another. I'll give you a for instance. A fellow I know was down on his luck, and I intervened to help him get a good job. He didn't hold it long enough for one reason. He didn't make enough effort at the job to be successful. I know, on the other hand, he poured himself into his kids' lives. There, to me, was because, let's face it, among the other obligations he has to his kids is he's the breadwinner. He's the family provider.
You're making such a good point.
Okay? So here, I'm afraid, at an effort to be the very best father he could be, he failed in a major responsibility, which is being the breadwinner.
Yes.
And Jim, that's the way life is structured. Fortunately, my sons are in business with me, and they don't have the need to scratch the way I did. And by the way, the bad part of that is I wouldn't want to be my son, because I don't want my sons to measure my success or their success by my success. And I tell them, well, you can be a lot better as a person than I was by striking a bit of a different balance in your life. And they're doing that. They're doing that. And I admire them for it. And I respect them for it. So I go back to recognizing you've got a series of responsibilities and obligations. Make sure you don't sacrifice so much of one for the benefit of another, that where you fail in such a way, it has profound implications over the long term.
That's such an important life lesson, Ken. I love spending time with you. I learn from you all the time. I do.
And I learn from you, Jim.
Ken, that last lesson that you taught us here is where we'll end, because it's such a profound lesson. And it just, when I hear you say it, it just rings so true, because I was just involved with talking to someone about a situation in their life that they're involved in, and I'll be sure to take your message back to them. Ken, thanks for all you do in all of your careers, and the impact you're having in the biggest chapter, in the most important chapter of your life, and what you've done with the health system at NYU Langone is amazing. Last question I'll ask you is about NYU Langone.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is NYU Langone Health System is part of NYU Hospital.
Right.
You have a couple of big competing health systems and universities, Columbia, NYU, Langone, Weill Cornell. What impact do you think the NYU Langone Health System brand has had on NYU, the university? Well,
First and foremost, Jim, we're not a financial burden. When I took the job, we owed the university $55 million.
Wow.
We paid that back, and we've never borrowed a nickel from them again. We're completely on our own. We have our own bond ratings. We have our own budgets. We have our own revenue stream. This cannot be anything but arrogant to say it, but I'm going to say it. I think right now, today, NYU Health is, if not the crown jewel, one of the crown jewels of New York University. It was a bastard son of the family reunion when I took the job. In fact, they'd already made a deal with Mount Sinai to merge the hospitals because they were afraid that the hospital, as part of the health system, would be a deep black hole that would pull a university under.
Amazing.
Okay? So the first condition I had in taking the job was that they would break up the merger, and which we did. Mount Sinai's doing much better, and we're doing much better. That's a win-win.
I think the color purple, which is the school color, and the university health system color, is seen and known more because of the health system now than because of the university.
Exactly. Well, plus, we've got this massive advertising program, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you will, whichever you choose. Health systems today advertise profoundly. Look at the number of not only health systems, drug companies. Thank God for the number of ads about drugs on television that fill the hole of tobacco ads years ago.
Yep.
You can't advertise tobacco anymore. It's against the law. But Jim, what I would say is that, like I tell everybody in the place, do not say to another medical facility, another teaching hospital, do not say follow us. Say join us.
Yes.
No, nobody wants to be known as a follower. Everybody wants to be a leader. That one little word, join, not follow, implies you're coming up to the bar with us as an equal, but do it. The more kids that we can educate in science and medicine, the better quality of life we're going to have going forward as a society. It's that simple, Jim. Nothing more, nothing less.
Well, that's it. You give me attitude because you make the complicated simple, and you made the very complicated health system simply an amazing success. Ken, thank you for being a friend.
Jim,
thank you for being a leader, and thank you for all that you do for everyone who's in your community every day.
Jim, I would add one last thing.
Sure.
Don't forget this. I am not a self-made man. My life is a collection of a lot of the efforts of a lot of wonderful people I was blessed to know throughout my life. So please, I am not self-made. I never said I was, and I never will say I am. Look at me as the product, if you will, of a lot of people who cared about another human being. Let's do the same for each other going forward. God bless you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Love you.
Have a great day.